Okay, so good day everyone. Welcome to this new BritCham Digital Transformation Series in Cybersecurity. I'm Asti, Events Coordinator at BritCham Indonesia. This BritCham webinar series is proudly supported by the British School Jakarta. And joining us today are our four distinguished panelists: Benson Tran, Head of IT Assurance and Cybersecurity at KPMG Indonesia; Dhirendra Kumar, Cybersecurity Advisor at KPMG Indonesia; Danny Hao, Cybersecurity Director at KPMG in China; and last but not least, Yuliardi Sutedja, Chairman of Indonesia Cyber Security Forum. This session will be moderated by Chris Tran, the Executive Director of BritCham Indonesia. And before we start, allow me to explain the functionality of this webinar. Please be informed that today's webinar is being recorded and we will be able to share a link with you when it's available after the event is complete. All dial-in participants will be muted to avoid background noises that may distract you from listening to this webinar, and also to enable our panelists to present without interruption. If you have any questions, please type them into the Q&A box at any time. It is at the bottom center of your screen. And we will have time for Q&A session at the end to answer your questions. Okay, now I'm going to hand the screen over to Chris Tran, who is going to start today's webinar.
Thank you very much, Asti, and hello to everybody. Good afternoon, approaching evening if you're in Indonesia, and we have a number of guests also from the UK to whom I wish a good morning. Welcome to the first in our digital transformation series. Why are we doing this? BritCham's webinars have been very much focused on actual issues and challenges and opportunities that businesses have been facing during this time. And rather than add to all the discussion about COVID per se, what we've been looking to do is to be a source of information and intelligence that can result in solutions to those challenges. And this digital transformation series represents one. I think it's all highly appreciated by everybody that at an extraordinarily accelerated pace, we've moved to digital ways of approaching all aspects of our business. Teams are working from home. We're more focused on our marketing through our websites, e-commerce, and also a greater emphasis also on social media as well. And with all of that acceleration, it's quite probable that many companies have had to bypass what would have been usual governance practices, usual SOPs, usual risk management in moving the business from one set of emphases to another. And with all of that comes risk. And as we will be hearing today from our panel, the risk is not necessarily always the obvious risks, which are perhaps scammers and hackers, but also there are risks from within the organization as well. So it also gives me great pleasure in, first of all, restating the sponsorship and engagement and support of the British School Jakarta. Thank you very much indeed. And a further welcome to three from the KPMG team: Benson, who's Head of IT and Assurance and Cybersecurity, to Dhiren, who's Cybersecurity Advisor and out of China Security Director, Danny Hao. We're also joined by the Chairman of the Cyber Security Forum, Pak Ardi, not for the first time, I think for the third or fourth time, joining a BritCham platform over the last couple of years. Thank you, Pak Ardi. With that, just to mention that actually it will be Benson who will open the webinar with a presentation, followed by his colleague Dhiren, and then some additional comment from Danny, and then I'll bring in Pak Ardi really to bring in alternative non-corporate association perspectives. From there on in, we're on a conversational format. We have received some advanced questions, which we'll try to introduce. Some are a little bit similar, and I'll bundle them if you don't mind. And others, you have the opportunity, as you feel inclined, to use the question box at the bottom of your screen. And again, we'll try to address as many as we can. I think enough from me. I'm very, very keen to hear the opening presentation and a few slides from Benson Tran. Benson.
Thank you, Chris, for the introductions. Good afternoon or good morning to everyone on the and thank you for participating in this webinar. It is really an honor to share this platform with Pak Ardi, who's well known in the cyber community. So thank you for this opportunity. Now, so over the next 15-20 minutes, my colleagues and I will go through introductions in terms of the new reality, how companies are adopting new technologies under the COVID-19 pandemic situations. And we will also, lastly, towards the end, we will also invited my colleague, Danny Hao, who's from our China firm, to share a little bit, a little experience on how companies are re-emerging in opening up their re-emerging in the opening up of economic activities. Danny is obviously from our China practice, and enterprises there is obviously at the forefront of this new re-emergence. Okay, with that, I'm sure everyone is currently experiencing the havoc that the COVID-19 pandemic had wreaked on us, both personally, socially, and professionally. I mean, professionally, is nothing more prominent in terms of showcasing how companies are forced to adopt new technologies than perhaps the video conferencing application that we're all using now. Asti, can I go to the next slide? Yeah, this is just an example of how companies are forced to adopt a new reality, and which is the remote workforce. You can look at the Zoom download, for example, which is one of the more popular video chat applications. That's 14 times increase, and this is data from the World Economic Forum. 14 times increase between the month of January to March. So, and this Zoom is not video chat applications is not the only technologies. We've also seen companies basically accelerated the efforts in adoption of cloud technologies in the infrastructure, as well as health tech, which is something very prominent nowadays in terms of alleviating pressure in the health system across the world. We also see the increase in bandwidth, which is in large part due to the work from home demands. In countries with stringent lockdown, for example, such as Italy, the internet traffic have increased by over 100%, according to certain surveys. Now, with companies basically forcing into the position of accelerating their adoptions of technologies, one thing that we do see is the risk associated with that. We do see that a lot of companies are not very prepared in terms of educating their users in proper cyber safe protocols. And this is not in large part not necessarily that companies are not trying to do their own due diligence. It's more of the timing of when these demands for work from home mandate comes in. As we see in a lot of cases, these the mandates from government to require business to work furlough the employees to work from home often comes with only a few days notice to a week of notice. So companies are really, just at the last minute putting their infrastructure and the workforce, to work remotely. And the risks associated with that we've seen, actually, next slide, please, is the increase in terms of cyber risk. Now, cyber criminals are by nature a creative bunch, I would say. And, and during this situations, this is a situation that offer a lot of exploits in terms of playing to people's fear and uncertainties, okay? We see increases in phishing and ransomware attacks that are directly related to the COVID-19 situations with the COVID-19 themes. So, and my colleague will go into a bit more details in terms of some of the protection mechanism that companies should put in place and how to cyber safe educate your user community. Okay, and these are just some of the examples that we've seen. Okay, next slide, please. Now, in terms of the cyber risk, what we do believe is that as economic activities slowly emerge and to their probably full emergence sometime next year, as many predict, we do see that the risk will remain. I mean, one thing that these situations have shown us is that the adoption of technologies as part of our daily work force is going to be permanent. Now, in terms of how permanent that adoption is going to be, it will be dependent upon your industries, as well as the pace of adoption is going to be dependent a lot on which industry that you're in. So in this graph, what we did was that we try to segment out the industry where we believe to have a more permanent change in terms of the business model, as well as trying to graph that across how fast that pace of change is going to be. So in the left-hand quadrant, top left-hand quadrant, what you see are industry that we believe will have a permanent business, permanent change in terms of the business model. Okay, so that would be in the energy, oil and gas, as well as travel and leisure. And what does that mean in terms of from a cybersecurity perspective? When we look at these industry, what we do believe will happen is that there's going to be a drastic cutback in terms of investments. So cybersecurity is probably cyber defenses measures and initiatives is probably going to be put in a back burner. So this is where an industry where we believe will be perhaps more vulnerable. And when you look at this industry, right, this would include hospitality. And if you look at the hotel industry, there is actually a lot of personal data to be had in that area, okay? So this is one area that we really want to focus on is how, in terms of the cutback, how would that impact the cyber defense posture of these companies? Okay, on the top right-hand corner, what you see are surge, what we call surge industry. And these are industries where they will become more prevalent in the new reality. And these will include obviously technologies, as well as life science in terms of research. And we do see that we do project that there will be increased investment in terms of cyber defenses, especially given in the life science area in terms of the critical researches that they're currently doing. And we've already heard here, and I'm sure all of you have, some of you have seen in headlines of breaches or breach attempts on these companies by various nation states. Okay, on the lower left-hand corner is where we foresee in what we believe to be industry that will be impacted. The impact might be small, but then there will be some changes in terms of the business processes and redesigning how the business model would work. And so these industries, we do see that, when they redesign their processes, there should be a consideration in terms of cybersecurity risk to make sure the redesign does not open up potential exposure holes in the business process. Okay, probably the least impacted in terms of I shouldn't say least impacted, but I would say the more recognizable industry that we see coming out of this reality would be the right lower hand quadrant, what we call modified business as usual. So these would be in the financial services industry, particularly specifically in the banking and capital markets, as well as utilities, power and utilities in the energy sectors. Okay, so in terms, this area is probably the least impacted and more recognizable as we emerge from this reality. Okay, now I'll pass it to Dhirendra here to talk a bit about the more specific cyber risks that we believe companies should pay attention to, and some of the cyber safe protocol that should be practiced.
Thank you. Thank you, Benson. Hi, everyone. Certainly, I think in the backdrop of what Benson and Chris mentioned, this is certainly a very unprecedented time, COVID-19. None of us have actually experienced such kind of a disruption. And this is purely a kind of, there is a lot of anxiety, fear, and keenness to have more and more information. So this anxiety has been known to be exploited by the cyber criminals to actually get unauthorized access to your personal information, or at least get access to your devices. So something which has actually resulted into a increase in the cyber attack surface, as most of majority of these staff are working from home. So that has created a lot of challenges for the CISOs and the cyber community to how to protect their environment. So KPMG has come up with 6 key risk areas, which is on this slide. The first one is the CEO fraud. This is not the new modus operandi, but because in the current environment where a lot of authorization will happen on email or on phone, so whom to trust during this difficult time is important to understand that. Remember, there might be people who will pose themselves as CEO, CFO, or any eminent figure in your organization, reach out to your finance department staff and ask them to transfer corporate funds to some bank accounts. So it is important that you make your staff aware that at any time you need to follow the corporate fund transfer protocols and be aware of that. If there is any unusual communication, they can use the incident reporting mechanism so that necessary actions can be taken. Now, while you're working from home, it is not easy to maintain confidentiality while you're surrounded with your family members, maybe some friends, your children's. Though it is advisable that your staff should work from a separate room as far as possible, or at least maintain a cyber hygiene, something like don't leave your confidential information unattended, use of privacy screens, or at least have the headphone rather than using speaker phone. And the third point here is, as we all are using the corporate devices while working from home, there is a temptation that you may use those devices for the personal purposes as well. And that will increase the risk of infection of a virus or any malware into your devices, which in turn will actually can compromise the corporate network as well. So the next 3 points, which is phishing and the insider threat, we'll talk about a bit more on the next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah. So this is a view that how this COVID-19 themed phishing attacks have been increased. Look at the percentage we are talking about here is 667% increase as of April. So that has some of the theme, I'll not go through all, but some of the themes are related to like COVID-19 tax rebate, which actually collect your financial and tax information. There are certain fake government websites or WHO websites which lures them to say that, okay, this is the latest information, which allows, if you click that link, which will allow the malware to get downloaded, and the cyber criminals may get access to your devices. Something like impersonating healthcare or a contact tracer to solicit your personal information. So there are many other mechanism or themes which is adopted by the cyber criminals to get access, unauthorized access to your information. So what we can do, we can certainly raise awareness among our team on this heightened risk of COVID-19 themed phishing attacks. It is also advisable that we can have some straightforward guidelines how to use remote working and certain tips on identification of these phishing emails. It will be very beneficial that if we run a helpline or online chat line, which can be easily accessible, at least provide a platform to your staff. If they are in doubt, they can reach out and also report if there is any unusual activity they identify. And lastly, the basic configurations on your devices should be secure, whether it's antivirus, anti-malware, or personal firewalls, so that you can get protected with the some sort of protection from these malwares or the infections. Next slide, please. Okay, so it's not only the, as in the opening remark, Chris mentioned that the threat is not only the outside. There is a insider threat, and this stress of uncertainty in the time of current challenging time, I think it can cause employees due to financial concerns, as well as there might be concerns over loss of employment. So these concerns have been known to be exploited by competitors or by cyber criminals to lure staff into giving away corporate data. So it is important to have a transparent messaging with your staff, regular communications, so that if there is any such thing, they can be addressed. Some few items or the areas to actually cover that. One is the recalibrate your models and tooling. So I think it's important, whatever your behavior models or detection tools, you need to recalibrate it, as the previous calibration may not work. Something like the frequency of remote logins or activity after hours, physical ID access card or token access. This may not be relevant anymore because the staff is working in a different ways at different times, and also using a different way to access the infrastructure. The other important thing is the keep the human touch. I think it's difficult time for everyone. We need to be mindful of that. And we also provide a support to ensure that there is no feeling of resentment or disillusionment. You also probably make sure you understand the challenges they are facing in balancing the security as well as the efficiency while they are working from a very unfamiliar conditions. They are not used to working from the remotely for such a long period of time. The other thing I would like to cover is there also something like people, there might be increase in the security alerts as per your security systems, because staff may be downloading some collaboration solutions out of necessity or make some mistakes while adapting to the new home working conditions. So expect that they need to filter out unintentional actions, and in a normal situation, this may warrant it for a disciplinary matter. but you need to tune your tooling as well as the disciplinary policies to considering the current environment. But if you identify any malicious intentional behavior, then it is very important to take decisive actions and use that as a case study to educate your staff that and knowing that detection and monitoring controls are still operational. It is a very effective deterrent control and can help employee to understand that security as well as privacy is still a business priority. I'll move to the next slide. Okay, so what we can do here in terms of from the technical security standpoint, I think it is important that your systems are secure in terms of how your end systems are, their password protection or the usage of multi-factor authentication when you access to your cloud or on-premises platforms remotely. The other important factor we need to be considered that you need to have ensure your data in motion as well as the critical applications are accessible only via encrypted as well as secure channels, and the network availability point of view, that because there is a sudden increase in the utilization of the network bandwidth, that also needs to be considered so that it can support, and they are configured in a high availability mode so that if there is any disruption, the overall disruption to the business is not impacted. The couple of more points I want to highlight on this slide is something on the third party risk. This is very important but neglected section. Remember that at least the third party which has a direct access to your environment, ensure you understand that how they are coping up with this kind of a scenario, as they may be working from home and the controls, cyber security controls may not be deployed appropriately. That could be an entry point used by the cyber criminals to access to your network. So it is very important to understand the your ecosystem, how third parties are actually connecting to your environment and have a control in it. Last point on this slide, I would say cyber resilience. You need to ensure that you have a new security operating model, maybe a use of automations, machine learning, analytics, which will enhance your detection and response capabilities. We can move to the next slide, please. Okay, so the new reality, I think it's just to summarize that it's a changing environment and digital workplace is a new reality. When I say digital workplace, that we know remote working works. So there might be a shifting on business infrastructure investment, which is physical versus virtual office. And we have many of the organizations have already considered that even if post lockdown, there might be some percentage of staff still continuing working from home, and there is an opportunity to save some cost on real estate. The other factor is the increase in investment on technology. Yes, certainly there will be automation, robotics, ML or collaboration tool investment, which will increase the reliance on technology, and hence ensure that these platforms are secure to provide these I would say the collaboration tools to encourage the people to actually work more swiftly while they are working from home. And there might be introduction to the behavioral analytics tools to monitor user behavior as well as the productivity. Last point I would say here is the new guidelines might be introduced by regulators because of the new operating models to govern the enterprise resilience as well as the security of the organization. So with that, I'll hand over to Denny to talk about something about our how China has actually coped up with this environment.
Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to share some of the views in China from my perspective. Since our KPMG colleagues has shared with you the potential cyber risks, so today I'm going to share with you from two perspectives. One is the economic activities opening, and another is transformation change in new reality. Actually, as we know that the epidemic outbroke in January in China and really get public attention in the end of January. So every company or organization has launched their emergency plan and informed their employees to postpone the time of start work at that time. And all of the organizations and the companies adopt the way of remote working. And even some of the critical organizations has shifted their employees into different group to get back to the office. So the social distance in office, rotation of the staff in office, and wearing the masks are required. And till now, we're still wearing the mask when we go to outside, or even we go to some other place. If we gathering with more than 5 people, we get meeting, we have to wearing the masks. And also, there are some of the national deployment of the applications for contact tracing. Those applications are used not only to track the movement of individuals, but also serves as a passport of the individual's health condition. Everyone need to show the health condition when entering to any buildings. So till today, we still need to show every time when we get back to the office building, we need to show the health condition to tell them it's green, we can get into the building. So that is one of the rule or even the principle in here. And so even though the economic is open already, but the level of the activities is not the same as before the COVID-19. We still cannot go to some place we get room with some more people outside. And also still some of the entertainment place are still closed. Being affected by the epidemic, every company started to consider the working way in new reality. I think the business resilience is the first priority for all of the clients. Some banks are calling us to update their BCP or DRP for the pandemic situation for the business resiliency. Digital transformation like adoption of the cloud technology is also one of the trends for most of the clients. Even with the business opening up, most companies will still work remotely. The reason is because there are not that much office space left after social distancing measures, and safety of the employees is also one of the consideration. And remote meeting tools and the connections have proven to be just as effective to allow employees to work from home. And also, we are still not allowed to get into the client's building to have the bidding or even delivery work. We still need to remotely to do some online meeting or even online bidding with our client. But the domestic travel are already open up, as long as you can show your healthy condition to anywhere or to when you go to any hotel or even buildings. So so it's that's all for the condition in China today. And thanks. That's all I want to share with you. Okay.
Hello. Yes, I hope you can hear me. Thanks very much indeed for that combined team effort from KPMG. Everybody's always interested to hear what's happening in China at the moment, because there is a sense, not a sense, it's actually the case that China is several weeks, maybe even months ahead of countries like Indonesia in terms of progression out of COVID. So those perspectives are all very interesting, and I think we can develop those a little bit more with you later. I'd really like to now invite Pak Ardi into this panel, because Interestingly, Pak Adi is somebody that wears multiple hats. He has his role as the chairman of the Cyber Security Forum. He is also a president director in the private sector, his own business interests. He's also a commissioner of a couple of state-owned enterprise companies. So I think combining all of those hats, Pak Adi, we'd be very interested in your response, first of all, to the comments and suggestions and guidance within those presentations, and then giving it a very, very Indonesian context.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And thank you also for our colleagues from KPMG, and thank you for having me on board for this discussion this late afternoon. Yes, indeed, it's quite a challenging time for all of us facing the COVID crisis, where all of us has to make a sudden transition from a normal, they call it normal, but we call it now abnormal, environment to work. And a lot of investment being put in on personal basis, new technologies, new laptop, cameras, so many personal devices are now being acquired just to accommodate the new norm of working from home. Yeah, and then there's so many also risk issues that's also now surfacing. We have a big crisis just this morning with data breach. A massive data breach, and so many things is going to surface a lot of issues relating to cybersecurity, personal data, data protection issues will be surfacing very soon, in a very short time. So it's very important that we talk about this, but I must remind all the participants and the panelists that talking about cybersecurity is not something that we can talk in a short time, because this is an ongoing discussion. A lot of new technologies is always developing by the seconds now, no longer by the hour or the day or the month, it's by the seconds. Also, the signature of the attacks is keep changing. Yeah, the symptoms, like the doctor, like the virus, the COVID viruses keep changing. That's why it's very difficult to find a cure. Same thing with cyber risks. Cyber risks keep changing. Once we know something, and the perpetrators keep changing their pattern. So we must keep up with a lot of these issues. We must learn. We must also start analyzing it. And it's not always an issue where we have to cope with cyber risk through technology based. The most important when we talk about cybersecurity is to develop the human talent. The human talent is the key to everything. And I'll talk about that in a second. And basically, I'm more going to focus about the human issues relating to cybersecurity. Yeah. Let me share you with some of the slides that, well, it's an old slide, but I think it's worthwhile talking about it. Hold on a second. Okay, when we talk about cybersecurity, not many people realize that cybersecurity has also a very big risk towards the economic and also national security. Very seldom that people think about these issues in a big way. So I like to just touch base on this issue very quickly, because nowadays, because everything's cyber connected, you and I connected through the internet. You're also connected to your client through the internet. You're connected to government services through the internet. Everything's connected. So it's very important that we understand that this also will have a very serious implication to our national security. That's why we have to realize this and understand that we are not alone. We are not doing things that we are accustomed to do in the internet and keep thinking that, hey, this is not going to give any risk to other people. It's going to affect other people once we're being compromised. And because this is the world of hyperconnectivity, and anything that's happened to you is going to happen to other people. Yeah, and this is some of the issues that it was conveyed by my colleague Melissa Hathaway from the Belfer Center in Harvard, which is quite nicely done. And this is a very, very good quote that she provided, and it just give you a glimpse of what's happening with the hyper-connected world now. Secondly, when we talk about national security, the best definition that I love to use is the US Patriot Act, because now it's very relevant. Maybe during that time when we had the Patriot Act when it was enacted was not relevant, but now with the constellation of a lot of the breaches, the sophistication of the cyber attack, I think this is going to be very, very relevant now, because it affects not only our economics, but also affect our national security. So the definition given by the US Patriot Act is one of the perfect definition that I can come across, and I think we should look into this very seriously. And what is really cybersecurity? People talks about it, but I don't think not many people realize what it is. I mean, in my world, I think also with our colleagues at KPMG, I think this is something that we're accustomed to work with on a daily basis. It's a set of tools that to assure, we call it CIA, not the Central Intelligence Agency, but it stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So everything that cross flows in our computers, our communication, we must assure that it's really, really have the originality when it was transmitted and received. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about cybersecurity, is how to ensure the CIA is being met. Yeah. And when we talk about cybersecurity, there's what we call the 6-point action plan. It's not something that you pull out of a hat. You get attacked, or before you get attacked, you do some preemptive action. Let's invest. Let's invest in equipment. Let's invest in so many things. So somebody comes to you offering technology. Let's invest in technology. But you have also to reconsider the steps. Yeah, that's what we call the 6-point action plan. You have to have an organizational readiness when you want to prepare yourself for cybersecurity risks. Second, you have to have people that understand the situation about the cybersecurity world, the risks, and know how to cultivate intelligence. Intelligence doesn't mean what the CIA does, but you can cultivate intelligence through various different means. Yeah, and you can analyze them using open source intelligence. And also, you have to also understand how to defend yourself in case that you're being attacked or breached. And you have also to prepare yourself how to detect. You have to understand how to detect. What is the strategy to detect potential attack, potential intrusion, and so on. And you also have to know how to mitigate and to contain a lot of the breach that you'll be incurring or you have already incurring. And the 6th step is recovery. Recovery is the most painful steps to undergo, and it's not quick. It's not cheap as well. So these are the 6 steps that we need to understand before we talk anything about cybersecurity. Do you have the capability? Do you have the preparedness to go into the cybersecurity scenario? Yeah. And why is it important? All technology, all systems have vulnerabilities. So this is one of the key things when we talk about cybersecurity. Everybody has to understand. Not a single technology is immune to risks. Yeah. When you invest in technology, you have to also do a lot of deep study on the risks and understand its vulnerabilities. Just don't take it for granted that it's safe. You have to also do your own research. You have to do your own testing. Yeah. In order to don't regret later on. But like I said, you have to study everything to understand how things work. And when we talk, because the topic of this webinar is digital transformation, it's not as it's a very complex world. Digital transformation, so many issues, so many technologies, so many what you call it, pieces of technologies coming, and needless to say, we don't know all of them. We need time to study them. We need time to understand them. But in the case of Indonesia, we are accustomed to just using them without understanding, and then without learning how this technology will benefit us, how this technology have risks for us. And this is how big the transformation is going to happen. And but needless to say, we are not I said literate in all these technologies. So we still have some time to learn, some time to work on it, and to test a lot of these technologies. So we are in a position now to learn. Yeah. Again, when we talk about cybersecurity, we cannot talk cybersecurity in 1 hour. This is how complex it is. I think everybody knows, that each step, each colored box that you see in front of you is not something that you can learn in 2 hours, 3 hours. It's a step on its own. It's a process. It's an investment. So cybersecurity is very complex. We call it complex approach to securing your domain. And this is how it looks. This is the reality. It's not something that you can overcome in 24 hours. It's a process, and the process requires for you to learn and to invest. Yeah. And when you talk about cybersecurity, there are challenges. Yeah, one of the biggest challenges, when you our colleagues from KPMG have already outlined, is relating to human behavior. We cannot change human behavior. We are already accustomed to using our technology, using our gadget, and so on. Yeah, but it's not easy to adjust. That's why when we have enacted working from home scenario during COVID-19, not everyone is actually accustomed to adjust to the new behavior. So, and it is posing a lot of risks for a lot of people. A lot of corporate networks are not ready to cope with the massive traffic coming from outside the office. A lot of the connectivity coming from the staff or the remote network are not secure. There's so many issues that you have to deal with. And this is the reality. Yeah, and we are not, no one in this world is actually ready to face the risk. Second challenge is, it's always been the human problems, because everybody talks about technology, how beautiful technology, everybody talks about the process, but one thing that people lack to talk about is about the people. When you cannot have technology, you cannot put technology, you cannot enact technology without the role of people. Yeah, you need human intervention to actually manage technology and the process. That's why human technology, human role is very important. We call it the 90-10 rule, whereas 90% of the issues that we deal in terms of risks and challenges is always related to human capabilities, and only 10% related to technologies. Now, challenge 3 is very important. I think Benson also touched base a little bit on this. Indonesia, even though that we are quite big in Facebook, we are quite big in other digital social media platform, but needless to say, we are not. We don't have the culture. We don't have the digital culture to really understand, the risks involved when you go into the digital environment. Yeah, one of there are 4 issues that we are actually facing, and I think this is also applied to other countries as well. We don't have the anticipative culture, yeah, in Indonesia. So you cannot talk to prevent something. You cannot talk about to prevent something if you don't know what's there to prevent. Yeah, that means you have to also develop your anticipative skills, and this is relating to your capability for learning a lot of things, a lot of challenges, and this is very important. Second thing, we don't have the security culture, and of course, if you don't have security culture, how can you understand the risk that you're facing? The third culture that we don't have is this lack of collaboration among agencies, among people in the cybersecurity environment. Each of them always seldom do their own things. So it's going to be very difficult when you have a crisis. You cannot face the crisis on your own. You have to collaborate and cooperate with among other people and other agencies. If you don't have the culture of collaboration, it's very, very difficult to cooperate. And the fourth culture that we now facing, and more frequent we're seeing, is we don't see any mutual respect anymore. Everybody's the human touch is not there anymore. Yeah, that's why we are seeing more and more ethical issues in the digital age. So this side also the digital culture is a very it's a very deep challenge for us in Indonesia. The fourth challenge, of course, when you have a crisis, you have an incident, cyber incident in your respective organization, no one's ready. We have faced two recent incidents where the management were not ready to face the crisis. They didn't even realize it's a big crisis, and the way they handle it is also not something that was very satisfying to the market, neither to the investors, neither to the public. So there's a lot of mistakes being done when handling crisis management. And some of these issues is relating to knowledge. People don't realize that in crisis management, you need to understand the whole ecosystem, but the digital ecosystem. And only piece by piece, they only understand. That's why it's not, when you talk about crisis management, you are not only talking about communicating, media relation. You have to understand the whole organization, the whole business the company is involved, the whole risk the company is involved. They have to also understand now the risk of going digital. This is something that you have to learn, and this is it's a fact of life. Unless you understand this, you cannot handle any crisis management. If you are a digital company, you have to understand what business you are in. If you don't understand, it's going to be a problem for you. That's why a lot of crises that Indonesian company will face relating to digital will not be handled in a manner where people will believe it's being handled properly. Yeah. Other challenges. I have to be honest. Indonesians are not. We call it not digital savvy. We still have a lot of issues relating to digital literacy. Yeah. And that's why a lot of the hoax, the fake news is very frequent happening in Indonesia, and it's already reached a level where we need something to work in to correct these issues. That's why digital literacy is something that we need to push, not only nationally but also internally with companies. Companies need to train their people on this aspect of digital literacy. Unless you are able to train your people, you're gonna have problems. This is one of the key issues in cybersecurity is a lack of training, lack of transparent communication, but risk. And companies are not prepared to teach a lot of this risk to employee, to staff, because they themselves also don't really understand. Yeah. And when we talk about digital literacy, it's not something that it's a process. Yeah, it's not something that you can teach in 3 hours. It's also developing a mindset, digital mindset. It's a process that takes a while, and you have to have a very serious attention in getting to understand a lot of the issues. Otherwise, you will not learn anything about risks, digital risks that you're facing. That's why a lot of companies, when they face a lot of incident, they fail to cope with the incident. That's why so many incidents that happen throughout the world, it's just it's something that people treat as something that's happening every day. It's a daily occurrences that people are accustomed. Well, you cannot look at this in this way anymore, because this is very serious issues, and it affects a lot of people, many people, affect millions of people, and you have to understand the risks involving. And I was saying earlier about the national security implication. A lot of the incident will have. Yeah. Challenge number 5. Yeah. In cybersecurity, when you talk about digital transformation, very seldom people don't look at investing technology, developing the organization into digital. They seldom never ever thought about the privacy and data protection issue. That's why we are in Indonesia. We now have big problems in these issues. This morning we have a big breaking news. A lot of the voters data this morning. were leaked. Yeah, were leaked. The leak originated since 2014, and it was the leak just surfaced just today, and you can imagine what's happening between that time span. What's happening to the data, how it was obtained. You know, there's so many issues because when they do the regulatory issue, they never think about privacy and data protection. They never thought about how to protect the people, protect the community, protect the citizen. Yeah, and this is one of the issues now. We call it tip of the iceberg. And the good thing about crisis like we are facing now, we are start seeing a lot of weaknesses within the management of the government and also in the system. That's why it's an opportunity for all of us to correct a lot of these weaknesses and put it on the right track so everybody will get protected. Yeah. Challenge 6. I think Dhiren mentioned something about technology. Since we are not technology savvy, the other challenge for us in Indonesia also what we call the other emerging technologies. So many new technologies comes into the pipeline. One technology we are not yet mastering, we are not yet learning into its fullest. The next thing comes the new technology, and we call it we're overloaded with so many technologies, wearables, IoTs, big data, so many things. But the question is, do we really know what is behind those technologies? How beneficial is it for us to use those technologies? And do we really understand each of the risks within those technology? Those are the questions that we have. And this is why it's becoming challenges for us to cope. And it's also posing a lot of risks in cybersecurity because the least you know about this technology, of course, the risk you don't even understand is there. Yeah. And let's talk about critical infrastructure. There are 16, under the NIST guideline. Indonesia, there are 10, and we have 4 priority sectors being given priority to be protected. And those 4 sectors are the financial industries, the utilities, public utilities, including telecommunications, the schools, and also the logistics. Those are the 4 priority sectors that has to be protected. Why? Because one another is dependent. One sector failed, the rest will fail. That's why we call it also hyper-connected. So 4 sectors being given priority to be to get protected, and unless we are able to protect them, the whole economy will not move. And we can actually see some of the weaknesses during the crisis we are now facing. If we don't have any logistic, of course, during the COVID crisis, all of us will not be able to obtain any food, because the the food is delivered through logistic means. And if we don't have the motorcycle taxi, Gojek, Grab, of course, we cannot send anything. We cannot send food to our colleagues. We cannot buy food online. So logistic is very important for Indonesia under this crisis. Yeah. And other issues besides challenges, we're also facing a lot of external threats. This is known. This is we are also. Organized crimes is now here in Indonesia. We are not prone to organized crimes and cyber espionage, activism. We have that here as well. And we are also facing changes in technology and governance as well as other countries. Of course, I mentioned earlier the scale of priorities for protection, which will involve the national critical infrastructure and so on. And the other challenges outside the previous that I mentioned is regulatory and compliance. A lot of regulatory regulation that's been drafted is always, behind compared to the current technology development. So we need to understand and to catch up in order to meet a lot of these regulations. to meet the industrial requirement. Yeah. Of course, changes in market dynamics. These are the 5 things that we are also facing, and this is what's happening throughout the world. And I don't have the answers how to cope with them, because it's, each is tailored to each countries. And the last question that I have is, we have already seen all the challenges. The question is, are we ready for all the challenges? It's just a glimpse of some of the statement that's been issued at the US Congress a few years back. And it's actually raising a lot of questions. And I leave the answer to each of you, the participants and also panelists, to answer whether we're ready or not. Of course, my closing presentation is when you talk about cybersecurity, it's no longer the government's role, government responsibility to care for all of us. This is involve everybody. It's involved multi-stakeholders approach when we talk about cybersecurity, and it's no longer an individual responsibility, but it's a collective responsibility. Yeah, this is what cybersecurity is all about. It's not individual tasks. It's not only one government agency. It's everybody's responsibility. With that in mind, let me conclude my presentation, and thank you.